Hello, my name is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. This is the third video in a three-part series on products I recently purchased from the Fabriano Paper Company in Fabriano, Italy. The first video showcased the adorable yet incredibly well-made and beautifully designed HETRE Mignon Wishes book, a tiny hard-covered notebook which I keep right here on my desk like an ornament, but which is also really fun to use to create little drawings that remind me of all the good things in my life. The second video featured Fabriano's gorgeous bouquet of notebooks, which they call their 7 senses of paper because it's made up of 7 books with 7 different types of unique paper in each book. They're both beautiful to look at and just a lot of fun to experience. I've put links down below to the Fabriano Boutique, their online retail store, if you'd like to learn more. Also, I think it's important to include a disclaimer that I have no affiliation with the Fabriano Paper Company and I'm not paid to promote their products or receive free products to try out. My reviews are based solely on products that I've purchased and believe are worth sharing with the art community to hopefully inform, educate, and maybe even entertain. These are very high quality products that I use in my own work both professionally and personally. And I know from experience how much I appreciate a solid review of an item I'd like to buy, especially when it's an expensive one. So with that said, for the final installment of this Fabriano series, I wanted to introduce to you my favorite purchase of the 3, the Fabriano Vergatone Notebook. Now you may be thinking that this book looks a lot like a dozen other books you may have seen. I thought that too myself when I first saw it. But upon closer inspection, I realized that this book has a lot more going on for it than just any other notebook. This gorgeous little book is itself a piece of art, and it represents everything Fabriano is about. Unparalleled master craftsmanship, forward-thinking consideration for the environment, and maintaining Fabriano's long, rich history of commitment to quality, style, and excellence. This little book is fully 100% handmade by master paper makers in Fabriano, Italy, and the construction is like no other book I've ever owned. From the adhesives and the binding to the tight stitching and the strength of the outer shell, Fabriano ensures that this product meets their highest standards and expectations. The name of the book, Vergitone, comes from the Italian word vergato, which means laid, and it defines the outer texture of the book's cover and how it's produced. In the papermaking process, the paper is literally laid across or rolled through a wire mesh where it's suspended or pressed to dry, leaving behind the markings of the wire mesh on the paper, much the way a watermark is created. A long time ago, people didn't care for this effect and it was rejected as being flawed. But at some point throughout history, the symmetrical patterns became so popular that even today laid paper is considered among the classiest styles of paper used for legal documents, official papers, and professional resumes. I absolutely love the feel of this book's cover. Most sketchbooks I own have a fabric or leathery finish to them that give them a familiar tactile feel. This book, however, with the deep grooves left behind by that wire mesh, gives your fingertips a surprise, joyful spark the moment you pick it up in your hands. And it's not just the paper on the outside of the cover that's exciting. It's also the core inside the cover that's made of a lightweight, durable stock that when you tap on it, sounds more like balsa wood than cardboard. But probably the coolest thing about the outside of this book is that the paper used on the cover is a tightly pressed cotton fiber paper that will age beautifully, and because it is paper, it can be decorated or painted just like any other paper. The book costs about $28 American, but like the other items I purchased, the shipping cost is pretty hefty and made me almost cancel my order. So for me, this was purely a luxury purchase, which I don't make very often. It also comes in other colors as well, including white, which would be ideal for decorating. If you're looking for a very special product to use with your own work, or a really unique gift that any artist will appreciate, all 3 of these products I've reviewed in this series are definitely worth taking a look at. So, with such high accolades and praise for just the outside of the book, you can probably imagine what the inside will be like. So, let's take a look and explore the inside of the Fabriano Vergatone Notebook right after this coffee break. So a little secret I'll share about myself is that I have a very sensitive olfactory sense. Yes, my sense of smell is ridiculous. And my family makes fun of me all the time for it. It's both a blessing and a curse. So don't be surprised if you ever bump into me to find me smelling new catalogs, magazines, or even a brand new pair of shoes. So when I first opened this book, I was taken back by the unbelievably fresh, clean scent of the paper. It was like smelling freshly laundered sheets that were hung out to dry in a clear, sunny breeze. All I can say is that I've never smelled any sketchbook this good in my whole life. But again, the magic of the book isn't the exciting cover or that amazing smell. The magic is actually in the paper. And this paper is made from 30% cotton fibers to make it soft, resilient, and really absorbent, and 70% virgin wood fibers to make it incredibly strong, durable, and again, beneficial for the environment. Now, you may ask, what are virgin fibers? Well, virgin fibers come from trees that have been freshly cut and farmed from responsibly managed tree farms and forests and have never been used or recycled before. Fabriano's virgin fibers are certified by the FSC, that's the Forestry Stewardship Council, that oversees the authenticity of these trees and their use in paper manufacturing. Because these fibers come directly from fresh trees, they're incredibly long, smooth, strong, and flexible. The paper made from these virgin fibers is the cleanest paper to come into the environment. And when it's finally disposed of, it enters the very first stage of the recycling process. And after it's been disposed, the recycling process removes all the inks, glues, and foreign materials that degrades the paper fibers to become rougher and shorter and more brittle with each recycling process. Paper can only be recycled a few times before it has to exit the recycling process and end up in a landfill. And ironically, once it goes to the landfill, that's where it starts to break down, and all the toxic agents that were used to continually recycle the paper can seep out into the landfill and eventually into the earth. This is why the FSC promotes introducing virgin fiber paper into the world, to help keep a new stock circulating instead of continually recycling existing old stock. And the cool thing is that Fabriano uses certified virgin fibers and treats the pulp with agents that are proven to be safe for the environment. I love the fact that we've come light years with recycling since I was a little kid, when it simply didn't exist. Now, when it comes to actually working with paper made from virgin fibers and fresh cotton, well, it's unlike working with any other paper. The slightly toothy paper of this Fabriano book is light and behaves like a nice cross between a cold and a hot press paper. And while I love to use paper that's 100% cotton, especially watercolor paper, you can definitely feel the difference when using a virgin fiber blend over just plain cotton. In fact, I did a video recently on Etchr sketchbooks that I'll put a link to down below. And my friend Nan Schifris, she's a fabulous watercolor artist. I'll put a link to her stuff as well. She sent me a couple of the Etchr sketchbooks, which are 100% cotton, and they are just fabulous to use. But this Vergatone notebook is so much different in just the feel, and it's just a whole different experience. You might think it's similar when you're comparing the two side by side, but once you start painting with it and you start drawing on it and you start using it, that's when you start to really notice the differences. Now for this drawing, this is just a one-off drawing. I just figured I'd have some fun. This is nothing serious or pre-planned. This is just sort of stream of conscious drawing, just making it up as I go. I wanted to make sure I used different mediums with it, so I started doing the colored pencil sketch, but here you'll see I'm actually doing a more firm outline with colored pencil. I'm using Polychromos by Faber-Castell. I'm using the Prismacolor Premiers, and also I'm giving the Arteza pencils a shot, the Expert pencils a shot. So I'm using 3 different colored pencils to see how they each react and how they each respond. And honestly, there's not much difference from what you would expect them to do with this kind of paper. This paper has a tooth to it. It's not as rough as a cold press paper, so it's not as destructive to a colored pencil, but it definitely will eat up your colored pencils if you use too much on a book like this. Even the Etchr sketchbooks, if you use colored pencil, it's going to eat your pencil up a lot. So I wouldn't recommend doing a full colored pencil drawing in this, although you can, and it's not a problem, but it definitely will eat up your colored pencil pretty quickly. So I wanted to make sure I tried the colored pencils, didn't have any surprises there. Kind of what you would expect from a colored pencil on a rough paper. All the 3 different pencils I used reacted the same way. The polychromos seemed to blend a little bit easier and come out a little bit easier. Prismacolors were fine. The Artisas were actually really good as well. So that's a good thing to know for me as far as going forward. I know that I can use colored pencils, and again, I wouldn't do a full drawing, but like I'm doing here just with accents, it should work just fine. The other thing I wanted to try was I wanted to try and use some markers. So I decided to get the Staedtler Fineliner pens and also the Arteza expert level Fineliner pens that Arteza sent me about 3 years ago. And they exactly the same thing. Their response was exactly what I expected, although they were a little bit more resistant to seeping in, which surprised me. Both reacted the same way. There was no real big surprises, but maybe it's just because I'm drawing on colored pencil and watercolor, so it didn't seep in as quickly. But they were fine. They worked excellent with these. Again, I don't think I would draw a full drawing in this book using these Fineliner markers, just because it would probably eat the nib up of the Fineliner pens pretty quickly. But what I will say is, using watercolor on this book is it's just a treat, because that's one of the things I love about painting in watercolor, is that it's not just how it looks in the end, and it's not just about the painting experience. It's about the feeling, the satisfying feeling of putting that water, the colored water, onto the paper and seeing it seep into the page, and just that experience of just that thirsty paper, as they call it, soaking in the paint and the color and what you see after. Now, the paint I used for this was Daniel Smith paint. It's actually a custom palette that I used white with, so I used like Cadmium Orange and Phthalo Blue to make pastel colors, and that's why I wanted to try it. I wanted to try a little bit something more opaque, and I was really happy with the results. Finally, I wanted to try a Micron pen and just see how that would work. These are a lot like the Copic multi-liners, and this is where I probably will use this kind of pen more. I'll probably use my dip pen, so that I'll have to do in another video, but for right now, the Micron pen worked just fine as expected. It doesn't take to this kind of paper like it does a smoother Bristol paper, because it's just too rough, and unless you're using a thicker point size of the pen, you know, a thin pen like this one here, I think I'm using a 0.2 or something, it just, you know, it works, but it's just, you'd have to really push down hard, and again, it would eat the nib. Anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed this. I really enjoyed using this book, and I really recommend checking out these products from Fabriano. It's been a pleasure to bring you this series. I thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos that I presented, please subscribe and share with your friends, because if you have artists that are friends, they might like to see this kind of stuff. Thank you so much, and as always, stay healthy and God bless.